Okay, everybody, welcome. My name is Terry Cantrell. This is the HLCA's May general meeting. We are recording this for playback on our YouTube channel. And we have what we think is one of the, probably the most important topic that I know the Lakes neighborhood has been dealing with for quite a few years now, and that's vacation rentals. This will be our normal format. I have a number of city staff with us. Before we get into the meat of the program tonight, I'd like to do our usual introduction of our wonderful NTLs, neighborhood team leaders, and they can give us an update on what's going on as far as police work in the Lake neighborhood. I have a North Lake officer, Matt Freegan here, and South Lake officer Mike Sinnis is with us. So, gentlemen, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
All right, good evening. Nice to see everyone. I'll go over the crime stats for the month of April for North and South Lake. So for residential burglaries, we had 5. We did make an arrest on 3 of those burglaries, and one individual was responsible for 3 of those. So that was good. We had 4 vehicle burglaries, and as our usual, all unlocked. So just, ask the residents to make sure to lock your vehicles at night before you go to bed, and make sure to take all items of importance, valuables out of the vehicle or out of plain sight. So we also had 2 vehicle thefts. And before I turn it over to Officer Sinez, we're fast approaching to summer, believe it or not. I know people will be going on vacation. So just a reminder that if you do go on vacation, let myself or Officer Sinez know, send us an email. We'll send out a watch order for extra patrol for your residents. So.
Excellent. Excellent.
Good evening, everyone. Officer here. And I'd like to not necessarily start the vacation rental, but I would like to mention that most of the ordinances are in effect, and we're going step by step and learning things that we can enforce now, such as I believe I got the first house is for not having an inspection complete. They're renting the property out, and the owner doesn't know about it, representatives. So we'll have code compliance go out there, make sure that they get fined. I believe that speaking to the code compliance East Side supervisor, it's $250 per day. Correct me if I'm correct on that. But any questions or concerns about vacation rentals, please let us know. We always look into it. We have access to all that information, and we're here to help. So I know it's tedious, certainly, and I understand all the frustration that many of the residents rentals, but we're trying to do everything we can to really the owners from any. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Stick around because we want you to, if you have anything to add here to the presentation, that's great. So also with us tonight is our wonderful North Lake Code Officer, Tashima Lewis, and doing double duty, trying to cover some of the South Lake area stuff too. So welcome, Code Officer Lewis. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. For the stats for April includes 94 code-related violations. 5 of those were high grass and weeds. We did have 1 property cutting down a massive amount of trees. We were able to issue notice for that. 5 business tax receipts required, operations without permits. 9 work without permits regarding the construction and for the building code. 4 regarding swales. 8 minimum property standards. 22 garbage and obstructing the right of way with palms and tree limbs. So I do a lot of those. I tend to do a lot of the alleys just to keep the alleys clear. So that would explain why that accounts for the majority. 3 vehicle tows. 9 parking violations and about 12 parking tickets as well. So a lot of parking and garbage related issues this last month. And then we had some property standards in there as well. Those are the stats for April. Today I did get a complaint regarding the property on the 1400 block of Harrison. I was able to get out there at 5:56. I was very busy today, but I still got there before the end of the day. So it turns out that the boat, initially when I went, I thought it was obstructing the alleyway. So nothing was in the alleyway, so I unfounded it. But it turns out that it's actually tucked in behind a home I didn't see because I thought it was obstructing the alley. So I made contact with the property owner and he explained that it was there for about 15 or 20 years. So I advised him that, you know, it can no longer sit there. So I'm gonna give him some time to get it out. So apparently it needs tires and a variety of different things. So he asked for 30 days. And I think that's reasonable. So he will have that time frame to get the boat removed. And I made sure to read all 17 pages of the vacation rental ordinance to make sure that I am fully aware of what it is. And to piggyback off of Freakin, what he said regarding the vacation rental. So as a unit, what we are going to do is, of course, issue a notice of violation if you do not have a vacation rental license at all. But even if you are in the application process and you have not gone through the inspections and have the official approval, you will be cited $250 for each time that we see that it's renting. So our intention is we like to see the application because it shows intention to comply, but until you actually have everything in place, we want you to cease operation. So we're hoping that with the citation, that would stop them from operating until they go through all the paperwork and the inspection before they begin.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. We'll get into some even more of the nitty gritty here when we get to Andrea's report here. But let me back up a little bit on the alleys and the brush. I know that the new sanitation ordinances, rules and regulation went into effect last fall, but we don't see a lot of enforcement yet. And I know that you work closely with the sanitation code officer, Larry Padosha, and who we work with quite a bit too. So it's a tough deal. Ideally, people would be using the alleys, and they should have a brush bay. We preach that all the time. So I know this is a real tough thing. We're entering the summertime. We're going to have a lot more foliage and a lot more rain and a lot more potential for clogged up stormwater drains. And I just like to say, as part of the FAU resiliency program that we've been participating in the lakes, with the FAU professor who's handling that whole program, we're going to be bringing back the Adopt a Drain program that the city had for quite a number of years. Kind of faded away, but that may help you, because if people can adopt a drain, the key is to keep the brush off the street if possible. And the alley is a much better place to do it, but they got to have a place they have to keep it off the pavement in the alley. So I know this is probably one of the hardest things that you and Larry do, is try to keep those alleys clear. So thank you for that, and watch for the Adopt a Drain. That's coming pretty soon. We're going to set that program up. It'll be good. So, okay, please hang around, because I know you do a lot with vacation rentals, as you just said. So stick around if you would, please. Of course, we have our District 1 Commissioner, Carol Shuham, is with us. I'd like you to say hi, and you will watch to stay for the whole meeting. So
yeah, Terry, just real quick, I just wanted to, I don't know if you want to hear it or not, but there was some good news out of Tallahassee, that the proposed legislation to further preempt the cities from being able to regulate vacation rentals did not go through, and neither did the preemption on home-based businesses. So two lucky things so far, but from everything we're hearing, it's gonna come back, be back with vengeance next year. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and just a big thank you to everybody on this call, including the HLCA, for working so closely with the city and helping us try to keep this under control a little bit. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, and that you have done a yeoman's job really on this for the last, ever since you came in office for a couple of years now. And every year we're just happily, we can beat it back. Because if that had gone through, this wouldn't be our program tonight. We would be talking about, I don't know what. So this is such a huge thing for us after all the work that Andrea and her staff did, and John and of course the commission, to try to revise the ordinance and work with the third party company here that we're going to hear about too. That would all have been for naught if that had gone through. So the good news is, I think though, even though you say it's coming back with vengeance in it, I'm sure it will. There's a lot of money from that lobby. It's definitely going to come back. But I think more and more municipalities are feeling just like ours, which we do. This is a bad thing. This is not a good thing for us, especially the coastal communities and cities. So I'm hoping every year that they keep trying. It's going to get harder and harder and harder to do it. So that's my goal. So, okay, thank you very much. So now we get to our main feature. I'd like to introduce, we have a number of staff here. First off, I'd like to introduce a person that I have known since 2001 or 2 easily. Andrea Wingjet, she's Assistant Director of Planning and Development now. And we started working together when I first came on the Preservation Board way back when, in the early 2000s. So you're going to be leading the staff presentation tonight. You worked very hard on this revised ordinance and the third-party company. We also have with us our Director of Code, John Schitze, who is a good 4 or 5 years now at that position, has done a really, really good job at a really hard job, obviously, code compliance. And as a matter of fact, Tashima works for John. And we have also another guest is our city treasurer, Sean Burgess. And Sean Burgess has done a tremendous job for us in the last year or so, actually processing the vacation rental permits and licensing. Her group manages that aspect of the licensing program. I communicate with Sean all the time when we get reports from neighbors and residents and members that this house is now a rental and this one now a rental. Sean is the point person for us, and that's just great. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, and I can give you share a screen. So let me share a screen with, oops. Let's see. No, I think I can do it. Yeah, Tall, I think Tall, you're going to have to share a screen.
I might be able to share. I could give it a shot.
Should be able to.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm going to do screen 1. Share.
There you go. Beautiful. Right. Okay. The floor is yours, Andrea.
Okay, so which one are you seeing?
We're seeing the slide that says Hollywood Lakes Civic Association with the vacation rental changes logo.
Are you seeing my notes on the side, or are you seeing just
Nope.
the PowerPoint?
We're seeing the whole PowerPoint.
Okay, good. Sometimes it doesn't go as smooth as I always hope for. So thank you for inviting me, Terry. I'm really glad that you invited us to come and talk about vacation rentals. I know it's a really important topic for the community, and I've been very fortunate to have some good teammates working with me on this, as you introduced Sean and John and all of their staff members and police, while they've also played a very important role in just giving us guidance and advice at different components of the vacation rental ordinance as well. Also Public Works, it's really multifaceted. And so most of the departments who are involved are here today, but there are still a few others who did not join us, but we should be able to answer hopefully any questions that you may have. So I have our contact information up here. If anyone has any questions, they can always feel free to reach out to any of us, and I will show it again at the end of the presentation. And we'll give you some tips for who to call for what issue and when. I know it could be a little confusing at times, so we'll try to clarify that for the group. So what I did for tonight was there's been so many different things going on related to vacation rentals at different points in time. And I thought it was important for the community to kind of see everything, an overview of everything as a whole and how it works together. So I've pulled a few slides from a few of those different components, and I just thought we could have a broad stroke picture of what's going on and how that impacts the community. So we've had several question and answer sessions, and there have been some members of the community who participated in that. And there was a lot of questions about who needs a vacation rental license. Now, I know the Lakes is primarily probably 98% single family. There are a couple multifamily buildings I know spotted here or there, and particularly as we move towards Federal Highway. So this was kind of a quick reference check that we created and we put online for folks to be able to reference if they ever want to know who needs a vacation rental license. So I think the most important portion of this is relative to the single family homes, which is towards the bottom, and the duplex, triplex, and quadplex. So in order to rent your structure, your residence as a vacation rental, you might not just need a vacation rental license. Depending on what your structure or the building is built as, you may need additional licenses from the city and maybe even the county or the state. Some of that is incumbent upon the person renting the property to know, but if they do reach out to Treasury, they'll do their best to try to guide the individual as well. So single family homes do not need what we refer to as a certificate of use. They will need a business tax receipt, and they will primarily be, there's different use codes within those business tax receipts. So if they're an O1, and then they would need the vacation rental license if they rent 3 or more times per year for less than 30 days. And as you've experienced, these single family homes can also be managed by a property management company, by an owner, a listing agent, and that type of thing. When we get into some of the structures that are in condo buildings, the questions have a lot of different permutations and can change. So this was very important for us to try to clarify here. Now, if you have a duplex or larger, you will need a certificate of use, and you should have your business tax receipt from the city. And again, you would have a use code of maybe a 03 or 08. And the same rules would apply for the duration of stay for the vacation rental license, and the same rules would apply for who can manage the property or rent it. So you may recall before this recent change that the commission had asked us to do, there were only certain areas within the city where a vacation rental license was required. We've gone ahead and changed that to citywide now. So previously, the yellow areas needed a vacation rental license, and you could see at the time the properties who actually had obtained the vacation rental license. And this was a concern for the community as well as the commission, which is why they asked us to look into this and see how we could enhance our enforcement efforts while also making this citywide. So well, not always, but for several years, the city has had rules in for vacation rentals. And we recently took another look at them, and we wanted to see how we could bolster some of those rules for vacation rentals based on the impacts that the community is seeing out there, code compliance, police officers, and everyone, and how we could work together to address those concerns. One of the biggest concerns, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, is the installation of a noise level monitoring and detection device. So this is something that is now required to be placed in a vacation rental. And what it does is it would automatically notify the rental management company if the noise levels within the property are exceeding a certain dBH or a certain noise level. There are best practices that the companies who sell these devices have, and the city has most recently created an additional method of measurement that they can use as well. Our method of measurement takes place at the property line, and these devices are located interior or just immediately exterior to the property. So they probably don't want to set it at the exact level that the city would use, but something comparable. And this way, the property management company would be notified prior to police or code compliance. So they can call the tenant and say, hey, I've got people calling. You signed the contract. You're not supposed to be having excessive noise. You reviewed the city rules because that was in your contract, and you need to tighten it up, or there will be repercussions in some form or fashion. So we're really excited about this, and we look forward to seeing how this can help the community, and also provide maybe some level of relief to police and code compliance, and put the burden back on the property owners. It's really important for folks who are renting their property to manage their property and to be responsible for the actions that take place on there. Our police officers and code officers have several different priorities. Noise and vacation rentals is one of those, but as you heard one of the officers talk earlier, they're giving stats about break-ins and other things that are going on in the community. So we really want them to be able to focus on other items as well. We've had the vacation rentals are now required to post their maximum occupancy at the structure. So people can't say they didn't know. It's posted there. It's also in the application, in their rental agreements when they rent the property. We also have posted on the property where they can park and where they should not park, because there are violations that can be issued for that. We've also posted on the property letting them know that the noise detection device is there. There were some other changes that we also looked at, which was reducing the maximum occupancy. And I don't know if I believe this is correct. John, I know you kind of have been like the expert in the occupancy levels, and I know we had lots of discussions on that. I don't know if there's anything in particular that you would like to mention about the overnight or the daytime occupancies.
Yeah, I mean, so the Broward County housing guidelines is what most architects and designers go by, which is 75 square feet for the first occupant. Doesn't include the closet, and then any additional occupants will require a minimum of 50 feet per occupant. When we proposed that to commission, they want to tighten that up to say a maximum of 2 occupants per bedroom. So even if you had 150 square foot bedroom, and under the normal standards, you'd be able to have 3 people in the bedroom. Under our code, you can only have 2. Even if your bedroom is 1,000 square feet, you can only have 2. So the commission really wanted to be very strict with this because of the problems that we have had. Obviously, with people, putting people in bunk beds everywhere, and in rooms that aren't legal bedrooms, that don't have legal egress in the event of a fire, and etc. So that's where we're at with the occupancy right now.
Thanks, John. A few other changes we made as well was, as I mentioned, we have a posting within the vacation rental advising the renters of certain things. So while it's posted there, we also specifically changed the parking area limitations that they are to be parking with. I believe we ended up changing it to in front of their property, not on the swale, not in a neighbor's swale, that type of thing, within the driveway. We've also excuse me. We've also requested that they have additional liability insurance. And we also added the requirement for additional garbage cans based on the occupancy. And we have seen an increase from Public Works has said they've had several calls and inquiries, and recently I think they've issued a minimum of 10 properties within the lakes additional garbage cans to handle the trash. So they've been working with us really closely as well in order to get that under control. And again, we kind of talked about the lease or the rental agreement that the renter and the rentee have, and we have required them to provide additional information within that. And if for some reason we call the management company, if police have an issue or code, they would have to arrive at the property within an hour, and they would have to have that lease with them. And it provides information, the names of the occupants, their length of stay, a copy of the city's code, and again, has to be available at all times. So I wanted the community to kind of know, a lot of times people use the phrase, you see the sausage at the end, but you don't always see how it's made and the inner workings of what's going on in order to get that. You just kind of see the end result or the effects of that in the community. And they're both very important, the effects of it and how we actually make it to create those effects. So I thought I would kind of highlight a little bit of what goes into someone obtaining a vacation rental license. So of course, they review the regulations. We ask them to make sure their property complies. And here's where Treasury comes in. They come in when they submit for their vacation rental license application. They pay their fees. Treasury starts checking for business tax receipts, licenses, application is complete, verification of insurance. I'm sure there's other stuff, Sean. I don't know if you want to, chime in and mention anything else that you're checking for as part of that step. But
Yeah, yes, we make sure that they're properly registered, the operator. If it's a property management or if it's self-operated by the property owner with the state. And we make sure the proper tax registrations are in place with the county.
And only when all of those things are complete is when then Sean reaches out to the inspector, the building or code inspector, who will then go out and schedule the inspection. So there can be time that takes place between somebody applying, Treasury vetting everything, and if they're missing something, then we give them the opportunity to correct it. And then we go out and we do the site inspection. There is another fee that is charged at that time. And, sometimes people pass on their first inspection, which we always hope for and we encourage. But sometimes there has to be a re-inspection, and it could be something minor that they would have to do, or they may have to get a building permit and or a contractor to fix the property or modify something, or make sure there's fire detection devices, there's extinguishers. We make sure information is posted on the property. We look for the noise detection device. All of those things are part of the inspection. John, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much covered the inspection. One thing I'd like to emphasize about the inspection is that I am very excited that we're able to do this because it gives us the opportunity where these property owners have come in and renovated an entire property without permits to legally get into the property and force them to make the property compliant. Without this inspection, vacation rental program, it would take maybe several years or even decades before this stuff would be discovered. So that's one thing that I would like to point out that I'm very happy about coming, having a construction background and seeing the substandard work and the unsafe conditions that these people create by doing this.
So after all of that is done, then they would get their vacation rental license issued to them. And it's not over then. They don't get their license. It's not a one-time, once in a lifetime thing. There are annual renewals that have to take place as part of licensing in general, business tax and that type of thing, and with their other licenses, as well as with their vacation rental license application and an additional inspection. Right now, those are set up to be yearly. Some of the ones that are pretty straightforward with the inspections, or perhaps some of the condos, we're hoping to be able to continue to do some of those once we have them done and under our belts the first time. A condo might be able to be done via our virtual inspection program that we have. And that would mostly be for places on the beach probably, because those are pretty straightforward. So again, it's not one and done. We are in there yearly for right now. And I think that's really important for us to continue to be able to, check and make sure people aren't then modifying things immediately after we leave. So Terry, you earlier in the meeting, you talked about the number of vacation rentals, licenses that are out there, and city staff has done, I think I stopped tracking it at some point, but we've done over 50 different types of communication blasts and reach out to the community. And that's not even including the emails and the direct mails that we've done to people who we know have certain licenses. And we've tried to bolster the compliance as much as we can. Compliance is always the most important thing for us. So Sean, as you know, Sean tracks. Hi, Lynn. Sean tracks the vacation rental applications for us and manages the licensing. So I grabbed our stats from March when we first started this, and I grabbed our most recent stats from today. And Sean, I don't know if you want to maybe kind of talk about the chart a little bit of, we talked about the processes and where things kind of flow and fit in, and this is reflective somewhat of that.
So right now, as you can see, we're almost up 150 per month when we move from March to May. And so we're approaching that 600 vacation rental mark. And we anticipate maybe even in the next week or so, we'll surpass that. But there's a process that happens, and as Andrea touched on, in which there's a complete review, which includes all of the requirements that they're supposed to submit, detailing the vacation rental property itself, and a process that we go through, ensuring that we look at everything from whether they're homesteaded or not, or properly so or not, and whether there's violations that are existing on the property when they apply. And we work through all of those before we turn around and actually schedule them for inspection. And then there's certain things. You'll see there's a couple of categories under the inspection process. We have 49 currently in the queue that need to be scheduled, that we have vetted, and they have all the paperwork and everything is in place, and we're reaching out, and that will be done during the week. And then we have 62 right now that are scheduled and will be inspected within the next 2 weeks or so. Once they get inspected, as John had mentioned, sometimes there's some irregularities, and with work that, is a question, and code staff, they review the records and to see if permits were pulled, and really take a close look at that before they either pass it, or they might issue a violation then if there was unpermitted work, and require that to be remediated. And then there are, clear issues and the property does need to be re-inspected, and they're usually smaller issues that need to be addressed, and once fixed, then the property can be re-inspected. So we cycle through this. It's not the same group. I mean, there probably are some that get stuck somewhere, but moving along, they rotate through here, and you can see right now, we currently have, as of today, 96 applications that we're reviewing to make sure that they're compliant. So as of earlier this afternoon, we had 578 registered vacation rental properties, and with 310 that are fully approved and compliant.
Thanks, Sean. And while our numbers are good and steadily increasing, we really want them to be better than that. And so that's why the commission asked us to get some additional software to help increase this compliance rate because of the impacts on the community. We wanted to push to try to see the impacts of these new regulations as quickly as possible. So we'll touch on that in a minute. So the police officers talked about, in the code compliance, Tashima also talked about our penalties for folks who are renting without their license and are maybe registering late. We also have the ability to generate action plans for specific properties if there is a specific issue that we want them to address. And there's a first offense, a second offense that are different from a standard citation that the city issues. The commission had us increase it specific for vacation rentals. And we talked about noise being one of the biggest concerns for vacation rentals. So the city also made some changes to the noise ordinance, and those changes affected citywide, but I just mostly today wanted to focus on the vacation rental portion of that and not the downtown area and that type of component. So some of our new regulations we basically created a secondary method to be able to measure noise at properties. So today, or previously, it was just looked at as plainly audible, and violations can be written. So we've gone ahead and added a DBA number to it. And we've also modified the days and times for quiet hours, which are at night, and the daytime hours. And I'll specifically show you what those numbers are here in a minute. And again, the additional method for enforcement, the ability for us to be able to use a decibel reader to be able to see what the noise levels are. And from an enforcement perspective, it was important for us to be able to have different departments within the city to be able to address noise. And so during the daytime, it's going to be your code compliance officers. And on the weekends, we're going to try to have an officer out here and there to assist with police, because we know police have a lot different things to be focusing on during the nighttime hours as well, but they will coordinate and work together so both police and code can help with that. So here's the additional method of measurement that we created that has the specific DBA numbers and the date and times. So for residential properties from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., it's a 65 DBA, and nighttime or quiet hours start at 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. and it's at 55 DBA. It's important that you know, a lot of times people may grab their cell phone and say, oh, I downloaded an app on my cell phone and I'm, you know, just the white noise out here is at this level. Um, so it might give you a general idea, but that's not enough for police or code to be able to write a citation. They have to have specifically calibrated devices. And again, it's, you know, measured at a property line. And John, I would like if you can maybe add some color to the conversation about the noise enforcement.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. First of all, I want to say that my core teammates here, Andrea and Sean, these ladies are amazing. There's no way this would have been possible without them, and there's no way this enforcement could be possible without, especially without Treasury and all the hard work that Sean and her people are doing. So I want to make sure that everybody realizes that. The second thing I want everybody to know, we at the time we implemented this, are only the second city in the country to require noise detection devices and vacation rental. Not next week, but the following week, we have one of the state's experts teaches people how to use noise detection monitors on the decibel reader. Is coming down to teach 2 sessions in the afternoons. And we're going to I'm going to have my entire code department certified, and I already reached out to police to see if the chief can send a few of his officers also. But we still will be enforcing the noise ordinance on the original method, where, you know, if the noise is unreasonably loud and the officers do that, because obviously we can't issue 400 police officers decibel readers. So what I want to do is make sure the community understands that if not all the officers will have those decibel readers, they won't be certified. So take it easy on them. If you expect them to have one and they just don't happen to have one, they have other methods and ways of citing if the noise is unreasonably loud, and I believe they will do so. One thing that we need to understand is that recently a law was passed in Tallahassee that code enforcement cannot investigate anonymous complaints. We're forbidden to investigate anonymous. So people in the community must understand that if you're going to call a noise complaint in and you want us to investigate it, you have to give your information. We cannot investigate it unless you do that.
And one of the other interesting things is that since these vacation rentals have the noise detection device in there, they are required to maintain their the data for a certain amount of time. And if it comes to it, the city can request a copy of that data or get it from the vendor. So it won't give you the noise level at the property line, but I'm sure it would have to be pretty loud inside or immediately outside, and the noise detection device would pick that up. So that's also something that's important for the compliance of this. And then, you know, we talked about the folks who are here today, just kind of talking, and we've touched on these different topics. And it just really goes to show there's not, you know, there's not just one division who can address all issues with a vacation rental or concern that the community may have. So please be patient. If you are calling in a complaint with a vacation rental, it might have to be handled by Public Works, potentially code compliance, the parking division, or the police department. So here's just a couple of the issues, one of the main concerns that we hear from the community and the different folks who can help address them. The parking division does not address or cite cars that are parked on private property. So that would be a code compliance officer who would respond to that. If there's issues with cars that are parked in the public right of way or, you know, out in the swales, then that would be hopefully the parking department. And if they needed backup, they would call police. And police, feel free to chime in if I have misstated anything. I am not an expert, but I had a very brief chat with Hal earlier today, and he says, hi, Terry.
Thank you.
So, oh, my picture didn't come in. Okay, I had a really great picture here. And just, you know, if you visualize it, on the left-hand side was the sun, and on the right-hand side was the moon. So you always wonder, who do I call and when? So if you're, you know, looking at this slide and you see the code compliance and parking division, that's who you're going to be calling during the day. If you have any concerns relative to parking, if you have a trash concern, we have our business hours here. We have what to do if it is on an evening or weekend. If it's not an emergency, you should put in a Help Me Hollywood ticket. We do monitor those on the weekends. We have our phone lines as well. I do have our email addresses. You could submit something there, but it will not be looked at as quickly probably as the Help Me Hollywood.
Code Officer Lewis has her hand up, so she may want to jump in on this slide.
Okay, I didn't see her. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
You may not see it. I see.
Hi, Andrea. I just wanted to if I may, chime in there with the parking. Code officers can also issue parking tickets on the right of way as well. So if someone is parking on the swale, let's say the vacation renters is parking on the swale of the neighboring property, the neighboring property can call me or the other code officer in the area, and we can actually ticket that vehicle for parking on their swale because you actually consent if it's parked in front of a single family residence.
Okay, thank you.
That's good
why
to know
we're all
because,
here.
yeah, that's a matter of fact, I just wrote that question down and I just got answered because it would make sense that a code officer should be able to write any parking violation anywhere. And that's good to hear.
So, yeah, so you can always call either one if you don't get a response or as quickly as you need. And of course, the police dispatch for non-emergency is, we never want you to call 911 because the noise levels are too high or there's a car park somewhere. You should never call 911 for those types of things. But if you have a concern relative to the noise and it's during our non-business hours, you can reach out to the non-emergency phone number that would go through police dispatch as well. I was trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to mention on that. Oh, there's one more thing. So while these phone numbers and information I'm providing on this slide right now are good as of today and in the very near future. But as we're going to talk about, we're going to have some changes for phone numbers and who to call as we implement our new program. So stay tuned a few months from now. If you happen to be watching this and it's not May 5th, 2021, if it's another year, double check your phone numbers because hopefully we'll have some enhancements to this. And so I mentioned that the commission asked us to, and we're almost done, so just please try to hang in there with me, asked us to get some additional software to identify the vacation rentals that are out there and that are not coming into compliance voluntarily. You know, people are always posting stuff on VBRO and you know, rent by owner and different things like that. And they put them up, they take them down, they change the length of stay. So they try to circumvent the licensing requirements. And there's companies out there, such as this one, who uses different algorithms and things like that online to be able to capture them. So these are the components that the city purchased. We purchased the ability to identify address locations, to look at ongoing compliance monitoring, and a 24/7 hotline where there's a dedicated phone number where a live person will answer if there are concerns from the community relative to some of the impacts we talked about, like parking and noise, that can be addressed any time of day. And also our rental activity monitoring for ongoing. We didn't feel at the time that we needed to purchase the mobile permitting because we have our permitting system and our current tax collection system as well. And so what I wanted to share with you is just the other week we had our kickoff meeting. And this is actually a slide from our vendor of the kind of our timeline for the project of what we're going to be doing in order to go live. So we had our kickoff call and we talked about step one, and there was some information we had to get them, and we actually got it to them before we even had our kickoff meeting. So we were ahead of the game already. And now the ball is kind of on their court where they're configuring, setting everything up to go by our rules. We're giving them our letters that will be automatically mailed out if there are violations. So it doesn't have to even come through our system and burden the staff with that. It really helps to automate some of that if there is a citation or things that are issued. Then we do some user testing, we do training, and we go live. So please don't hold me to the date, but we are hoping to be able to go live with a portion of this by the target date is mid-June, but that is a very short target date for this, but we know how important it is. And what they really need to do is they need to upload all of the data for vacation rentals into their system so that when a resident calls in with a complaint on the 24/7 line, they actually have the phone number of the property manager in their system so they could call and handle it. And that's why the phone line system has not been released yet, because we have to make sure that there is a baseline of data that's there. So please bear with us as we go live and we launch this. We would be happy to hear any questions or comments as we start to kick this off and go live with the community. And again, this was directly from their PowerPoint, their slides on some of the stuff that they needed from us, which we had already done at the time of the meeting. And we've already followed up since then with those last two items, and then the action steps from the vendor. So there's also a phase 2 that once we actually go live at some point in June with that first component, there's still the rental activity monitoring and other stuff that's going to have to be done in order for us to kind of keep this going. And you can see they have some target dates on here, but this was not the main priority for us right now. Our main priority was the other stuff that we talked about and the phone line. And with that, thank you so much for having us here today. I hope we didn't put you to sleep. I know it was a little bit long, but we thought a lot of the information was really important for the community to hear what the city is doing to address the impacts from vacation rentals in your neighborhood. And if you have any questions at all, you can always email them or call the 2 phone numbers that are on here, and we will be sure to get back to you. And if you have any questions, Terry, or anyone else here from the group, or clarifications on anything, I will turn the floor back over to you, Terry.
Great, thank you. Yep, give me back the grid so we can see everybody. I have a number of questions. I want you to know that we've been hanging on your every word. That's how important this is to all of us, and I'm sure to all our viewers too. So thank you very much. Excellent, excellent presentation. I'm just going to run down what I have here, and Andrea, I'll let you field the question or pass off to whatever staff member, whoever. One comment that always bothered me, and you mentioned insurance requirements. I'm really glad to see that. But from your standpoint, or Sean, or possibly John, what is it? I don't want to call it fraudulent, but is it dubious for a rental property owner to just buy a regular, like a family insurance policy, like a regular homeowner insurance policy, when they're really operating a commercial enterprise? Isn't there a big difference in that? And same thing with a mortgage company. I've always wondered if that wasn't some sort of issue that could have been explored early on in this process. I mean, does anybody have any thoughts or comments about that?
So there is a difference. And if somebody did have a single family home and they didn't have the proper insurance and somebody got hurt or whatever, the property owner is going to be significantly at risk. And also, the short-term tenant wouldn't have the protection that they need as well. So one of the things that these larger platforms do offer, for instance, Vrbo and Airbnb, they do offer this liability insurance. So we didn't know that at the time when we were making this requirement, but it was brought to our attention and we said, okay, so if you are registered with them, and that's one of the incentives, and those are the primary ones that I'm aware of, then they do have that added protection. And if they don't do that, there actually is I rent property in Palm Beach. So the insurance I have is more expensive because I don't reside there. And yes, if you get caught, the insurance company doesn't know about it. They could until something happens. So that's why we require the liability insurance. If they aren't demonstrating that they're advertising on Airbnb or Vrbo, and we do have quite a few of them that submitted anyways, that they do have the extra insurance required.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that was a question that I always had. That and mortgage companies would consider it fraudulent if you didn't tell them, well, I don't live there. It's a commercial property now. So that's good to know. The other thing too, there's probably not enough of these to really warrant any special treatment, but there have been, we hear all the time that there's a handful of owner occupied vacation rentals, people, and most of, from what we understand, do have the license. They do go through the license process too. But a lot of these property owners that live in the house that rent out a room or rent out the back cottage, whatever. And quite frankly, that's been an ongoing practice since the beginning of time here in Hollywood. People rent rooms or their cottages in the back of their property seasonally or even annually forever. It's only the short-term rental where this has really become a problem for us too. But did you ever consider treating the small number of owner-occupied a little bit differently? Because they complain that, why do we need to have noise monitoring? I'm in the house. I live in a house, and of course, being kind of at the vanguard of this thing, I get those calls. People complain to me all the time. So is that anything, did you ever give that any thought?
I can probably answer that. We do treat them differently, Terry, with the fee is less. The reason why we decided that we still want them to have the noise detection device is because they're not always going to be there. They themselves might go away for the weekend or something like that. So it's not a big expense. Most of the ones that we're looking at, it's $100 for the device, and that covers the first year of service for free. So if that cost, and we did have some pushback from the Realtors Association, but we finally convinced them. They say, listen, if that cost prevents you from getting a strike on your 3-strike rule, then the first time that it saves you from that strike, it's already paid for itself. So they finally bought into it, But the reason why we do want the people that even they're owner occupied is because they're not always there. They might tell the person they're renting to, hey, listen, I'm going out for the night or whatever, or I'm going away for the weekend. The house is yours. And then all of a sudden we have a problem. Excellent. Yeah, that's an excellent response. Thank you. I'm going to remember that when I keep hitting me up for that all the time. So a couple more for me. I'll pass it around. Who is actually doing the inspection? Is it still our staff, or are we going to farm that out possibly to third party maybe? Yeah, Terry, Rolando does a lot of the inspections. We also have some of our building inspectors that are doing the inspections, but we have CAPS, which is a company that provides us with additional inspectors, even when during the normal building permitting process. And so we have a contract with them. We've always had a contract with them. We use them for engineering and a bunch of other divisions. And so we have trained some of their employees to do the inspections, and the company has told us that they will be able to give us additional employees as needed.
Great. Andrew, on the Granicus deal, I just want to make sure that we're clear that I saw the original presentation and they estimated there were 6,500, count them, 6,500 potential vacation rentals in existence in Hollywood whenever that slideshow was done. Are they actually going to be working with the city to identify those so you can process them? This is part of the contract, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can have one address that can be advertising on multiple platforms, but it's still one property. So they check, I forget the exact number, but they check several dozens of those websites and pull the data from all of them to identify the properties. And they are going to be letting us know all of those 6,000 properties potentially that are citywide that are renting the property. Now, I want you to it's important to keep in mind because vacation rentals are only for if you rent your property within a certain amount of time, number of days within the year. So, we talked about people kind of posting them and coming in and out. So this software should be capturing that for us. So we could say, hey, you're playing games. You know what? You actually hit the mark and you're a vacation rental now, where you might have been a short-term rental before and you didn't need a vacation rental license. So yes, those numbers, I think we're going to see them change. And as a result of the vacation rental program, Sean in Treasury has actually seen an increase in her business tax receipt applications as well, because a lot of people coming to find they did not have their business tax receipt to rent the property. So that has been going up, and we'll see the vacation rental climb. But I think that we'll also see trends of people just going to short-term rentals or perhaps long-term rentals over time.
Yes, hopefully that's the case. We do hear the occasional story where the vacation rental owner or might be a Hollywood resident as well. They're tired of the hassle. So
Yeah.
we're hoping there's more of those will have it too. So, well, Sean better get ready for it because there could be a deluge of license processing here. So hopefully, Sean, you'll be asking for more staff, I'm sure, I hope, so get this done. A couple more things. I don't know if there's any reason why. I was thinking originally when I heard about the Granicus thing, there would be some reason why maybe we could actually sit down with them and figure out. I don't know if that's really necessary or not. I mean, you folks got it, got a handle on it. You don't need our input about it. As long as we have access to the Granicus hotline, of course, and working through you, we can still help them identify spots because although it sounds like they really have this down, because I know how difficult it is to track these. Sean and I talk about it all the time. And I'm sure that, Commissioner Shuham, it just takes a lot of research and a lot of back and forth on different websites. And we have some clues now. We've been using the property appraiser's website to try to identify, get pictures of the properties because so this is really going to make it a whole lot easier too. So I have, we got a number of questions, emails. You answered most of them. There's just one or two here, and then I'm going to open the floor up to, I know Tal probably has some stuff too he wants to ask. You mentioned calling the police and for the complaint, you need to give your name. And that's good because a lot of people do that. And that was one of the questions that I had. Is that really necessary? And you answered that it is. I just want to make sure that this member gets that perfectly clear in their mind that they are going to have to give their name. So, and nobody should be afraid to do that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So, what actually happens? I mean, if a neighbor calls, a resident calls and makes a complaint about noise, I mean, how is that tracked? Doesn't a report have to be written every single time that an officer goes out? I mean, I know they can do no report written and whatever the code is for that, but maybe the officers can elaborate on that because it seems that a lot of residents say, well, we call, we keep calling, we keep calling, keep calling. These people keep violating they keep making noise. When are we going to see their license pulled? So at some point there has to be a point where there's so many, I mean, how many strikes can you give? So it's important that officers write these violations so it goes against the record. Is that correct? Somebody want to answer that?
I mean, I think police can respond to how and when they write the reports, but one of the things that we're doing as part of this is, you're exactly right, Terry. We have to make sure we're looking at any type of data or statistics from police responses and their reports from vacation rentals, because those strikes count against their license. So if there's a report written, that is going to be passed over to code compliance so that they can follow up accordingly. And police, feel free to jump in here in a minute, and then maybe
Sure.
John if need be. But then we, Treasury, will be able to pull their license. So it's even from the parking department, code compliance, Sean, and police, and all of those infractions have to come together and be funneled to one spot.
Well, I'll chime in here. And so we are, from a police department standpoint, we are mandated to, if we respond to a vacation rental, we have to do a report. And usually that report is actually on our lieutenant's log, so all of our supervisors are aware of it. And it gets sent to the East Side supervisor, which is my lieutenant. So that's sort of how that goes. Everything's documented for the most part. Our officers have access to contact our teletype program, which is they have access to the representatives, the 24-hour contact. Now, whether or not the officers use them specifically, that's sort of up to the officer's discretion if they can handle the complaint, whether it's parking, noise, go in, warn the tenants, warn the guests, and have them, obviously the end goal is compliance. But if it's a tedious location and we continuously have to go out there, then we will take action. But in regards to the reports, more often than not, every vacation rental, we're mandated to report on that. In regards to the licensing, I'm under the impression, and I know this is the way it used to work, is there would have to be some violation, and you'd have to get it twice for the city to revoke their license. That's that. And I know, Angela, and you said you went in there and said that you guys have a program that you would let the representative know. That would certainly be helpful to us, because the amount of false service that we have at these vacation rentals is absolutely mind-boggling, and we spend a lot of time at some of these problem vacation rentals, and it's we should be, we could be out doing other things. So
Yes, Carol. Commissioner.
I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding. I thought that the purpose of the 800 number, Andrea, will be so that the first call residents are asked to make will be to this 1-800 number once it's up and running.
Correct.
So we're going to give the house managers an opportunity to avoid the police coming to the house.
Absolutely.
So on the one hand, you say, well, I want 3 strikes because I want them to lose their license. But I don't think that's, I think the way to go is to have no violations. And so if this 800 number works and all of us call that number first and that property manager is notified immediately and the problem's resolved, I think eventually that practice and that hassling of that property manager is going to really pay off.
Yeah.
So that's how I think it's supposed to go.
Well, then, yeah.
Sorry, Terry. Quick question. So it seems like the ideal situation is to aggregate all the violations back to you guys in licensing in the city. Now, you're pulling from my understanding, code, police, and parking. Those are generally the 3 departments. Is there currently a system in place to do that aggregation? Is that the new system, or what is the process going to look like for you guys to actually get that, short of just putting a tick on your calendar to purged through the police database or the code database, et cetera?
So we asked our IT department to basically take our vacation rental license database and our code violation database and marry the two so that Treasury could go through and look at, or, you know, code and police as well, but Treasury, we go through right now, we've started this once a month, and we look to see, or if there is a problem one, which is obviously coming to the surface, but just in general, go through and look at, it lists every vacation rental there that has a violation within the period of 12 months, all their violations, what they were, and that's where we're able to address then if they've exceeded their violation quota. And so what my understanding is that when police have to write a report and it's founded in everything, it goes over to code and they issue a violation based on that police report.
That's correct, Sean. So we get in code, get police reports when there's a violation. What we do is we issue the violation or the administrative citation. And then if the people try to appeal it and it goes to magistrate, then that officer who wrote that report and witnessed that violation becomes a witness in the magistrate. The police department typically doesn't use magistrate. We do 2 magistrate sessions a month. The majority of the time we send out about 300 notices monthly. A lot of those cases are settled by stipulated agreements, but we won't be settling vacation rental violations by stipulated agreements. Any of those violations where they appeal the violation will be heard in front of them.
Good. So,
Does parking have the same system where parking also reports to code and the whole process? So basically everything gets back into code and that's where we kind of tie it together with the vacation rental addresses?
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
yeah, we got you.
Yeah, okay. For the most part, parking parking violations that have to do with vacation rental, as Tashima mentioned earlier, are going to be handled either by police or code. So as of now, Sean, I'm not so sure that parking is also tied into that, but they could be, right?
I have seen them in there in parking violations. So as long as it's brought to code, it gets entered in there. So that's how we see that. And of course, you know, like Commissioner Shuham had said, the whole idea was if you keep hammering these property managers or property owners, if they're managing their property, that pain for the majority of the ones who want to operate properly, they'll either, one, figure out a way to be responsive and be very harsh or direct with their tenants because they're tired of it, or they'll get out because they're tired of it, or you'll have the small group of them who are the big problems who they'll be revoked. And that will be done through the whole magistrate process because they'll contest the violation and so on.
So just to back up a little bit on the Granicus 800 calls, I mean, in theory, you could have a real problem rental and 1 or 2 neighbors are calling Granicus 800 line all the time, and the management is dealing with it, so no reports are written up. But you can ping, you can probably find out through Granicus just how many 800 calls have come from XYZ address and use that as a possible reason for revocation. Does that make sense? Is that how this is going to work?
John,
I don't think, yeah, I was going to say that this ordinance is not written that way, but
Okay.
it may be something to consider in the future. I mean, you have to have a violation or a citation now. So I think you raise a good point, Terry, and it's something that I think once we get started with that 800 number, Andrea, we'll have to see, like,
Yeah.
if there's people that are just responding immediately to 10,000 complaints a night, we're not really doing the neighbors any good. But hopefully that won't be the case.
Well, I would just say that at some point, the Granicus people could just look at these calls coming in all the time and maybe rather than call the manager after the 25 or 30 of them in a month, they actually do refer a police or a code officer there. So a report could be written. So go ahead, Andrea.
I was going to ask John.
I just wanted to chime in real quick.
Yeah.
So Terry, just so you know, as far as code prosecution goes, let's say, for example, a real estate ad or something like that, we can use that as backup information when we go to magistrate, but it cannot only information. So in this case, because Granicus don't have any enforcement authority, when we do take someone to magistrate, there's no problem with us going to Granicus and say, hey, what history do you have with your property? And when we present our case, we can say, in addition, you know, we have this information from our company that we're using, and they have documented X, Y, and Z. So that will be more you know, convincing for the magistrate to take some serious action.
And and Granicus documents it in preparation for hearings, for magistrate hearings.
Okay.
John, one of the things that's on that we're able to do is the action plan. Does a property have to have received a violation in order for us to put them on an action plan, or can they just be on an action plan because we've received X number of calls to our hotline and we think you need an action?
My interpretation of the way that we wrote the ordinance is that they would have to get the violation.
Okay.
And then we can tell them, let's say, for example, it's overflowing garbage or parking. We can say to them, okay, you're suspended until you come up with an action plan and tell us how you're going to prevent this violation from reoccurring in the future.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Right. Tashima?
Okay, so I just wanted to give a little bit of, I want to make sure I understand fully. Well, not I understand. I want the residents to understand what it's going to look like for me, because what's going to happen is, as the East Code officer, and the majority of the vacation rentals are on the east side, then I'm going to be super busy with this. But I want you guys to understand that I'm not going to neglect the other areas to take care of as far as property standards and other things. So how I plan to do this is basically, I work Tuesday through Friday. Good thing, because the vacation rentals tend to come in on the weekends. So what I would hope to have soon is some form of a mapping or I want a GIS map where I can ping the property owners that have an active vacation rental license. So that way, I know, having worked closely with the residents, that they don't always want to have to complain. Sometimes they want us to be able to see something. Sometimes they're always having to be reactive. And so what I can try to do is pick a certain area every week and drive around on a Friday, especially knowing that most people check in that weekend to have a turn up of a party or a gathering. When it comes to the noise, however, I need the residents to understand that even with my proactive routine, we most likely will still need a complaint for that, because it varies. It has to be continuous and aggravated. So for example, you might have some kids in the pool, maybe making a splashing noise. It's loud, but it's not continuous. So it most likely will stop. So just be careful with the complaints sometimes, especially in the evenings, because as the police officers and Andrea and John, everyone have already stated that, you know, the priority level between, you know, crimes against people and property and noise is clearly different, right? So we will be using certain visible readers, but your smartphones can also have a feature as an app you can download as well. Is it truly a noise issue? Is it really loud? Or is it just annoying? So we kind of want to find that space so that way we're not overwhelming the police department after hours. I don't mind working however long I need to. If I get to come in, that's not a problem for me. If I have to come in on the weekends, etc. But I just kind of want to put that out there so that way we are working beautifully together with code and police and everything else. So that way we share the weight, because it's going to get heavy, especially on the east side. So I kind of want to give an idea of what it is that I'll be doing to help mitigate this issue. And another thing I noticed that some of the residents don't really like to leave their name, because, you know, we live in a time where people would like to retaliate. So I totally understand that concept. And even though there is a state statute that is changing that, where you can no longer be anonymous, you have to give a name. So give a name. Okay.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
There you
All right.
go.
All right. So that way it protects you if you don't want to have a neighbor to neighbor dispute. We also want to remember that we don't want to create issues between the neighbors, but we also don't want neighbors to be incumbent on issues happening from the neighbors. So we got to find a sweet spot the best way that we can. Okay. And I will do my part to see how I can make it seamless the best I can between the people who want to operate a business and those who want to have a safe, peaceful, and, you know, living environment. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say for the evening.
You're great. Thank you very much. You know, by the way, if you could clone yourself, it would be great, because that way you could cover more. No, thank you, Tashi. You do a wonderful job. I know that now you have to give your name, and in theory, though, unless somebody was to do a public record search, there really is no way. You're not going to tell anybody who called. You know, you're not going to tell neighbors, and that doesn't happen. Shouldn't happen. Not supposed to happen. The police aren't going to do it either. So somebody would have to do a public records search to find out who called on their code violations. So I had one particular residence that's been suffering quite a bit, and it's been very helpful for us because they have 3 or 4 rentals right around them. But they asked, is it possible to limit the number of rentals per block? And unfortunately, the state, that we can't do that. It would be wonderful if we could. And maybe that could be a goal someday in a friendlier legislative environment where we could get that. Okay, we're not going to eliminate vacation rentals because the genie's out of the bottle necessarily, but we can limit maybe where and how many there are in given areas. So I'll answer that for everybody. The answer right now is no. We can't do it. The last thing that I wanted to talk about quickly is the SPL, the sound pressure level meters. I have one on my cell phone. So we're talking about, you're actually talking about, John mentioned an X number of officers are going to have the special meter. I know you can buy them separately, you can buy standalone meters. So I guess the sound meter on an app, on a phone app, is not acceptable. Is that correct? John, is that right?
Yeah, Terry, that's correct, because they have to be calibrated and they have to be certified. That's the only way that you're going to be able to present it in court or in front of the magistrate. So, and also, even though we are not required to be trained, we were able to locate one of the top trainers in the state that actually has been authorized to issue certifications, and he is the guy that's going to train us. Like I say, we're planning on not this coming week, but the following week, because we have magistrate coming up Wednesday, and he likes to work on Wednesdays and Thursdays. He's coming from Tampa for us. So he's going to train us. And like I said, we're hoping that we can have at least a handful of the officers that work late at night, come along to the training, and all of the code officers in the unit will be trained with the decibel readers.
Are they pricey, John? Are they, how much
They
cost?
can be pricey. I was able to find a really good company that has a very dependable decibel reader that is reasonable. The decibel reader also comes with a device that calibrates it. However, the company claims that it's without calibration, that it's within 1 decibel in accuracy. So the total package is about $500 for each one. Now you can spend as much as $4,000 for each decibel
Yeah,
reader.
yeah,
But these ones are the quality is good enough to use for law enforcement and for code enforcement. And so we're going to start with these, and they should work out just fine.
great. Commissioner Shuham, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, this just a question for John. I understand, with that expense, you said, of course, not every officer is going to have one, but in light of the saturation on the east side of vacation rentals, can we make sure that the officers on the east side all have them?
That's not a commitment that I can give. That would be up to the chief, Chris O'Brien. But he has mentioned in the past that he is willing to have a certain amount of his officers certified with the decibel readers. And so I reached out to him this week, and we're going to put together these classes and hopefully have some of the officers attend.
Good. I
John-
guess, to put it more simply, can just make sure that the distribution of the meters that we purchase ties to where we have vacation rentals.
And John, can we still have the original method of like, was it audible noise? Like, we created a secondary method in order to make citation. So it's not that police can't cite or that they have to have, right? Can you maybe explain, talk a little about that?
We didn't change that portion of the ordinance. The way that we were able to cite prior still exists. Now, the prior requirement with the municipal prosecutors and the city attorney's office was that the officers had to go inside the house and listen from inside the complainant's house. We have worked that out to where the officers do not have to do that anymore, but they will be, if they have a violation, they will be writing a report, forwarding it to code enforcement. Code enforcement will issue the necessary violation or citation. And obviously the reality is every one of these vacation rental people are going to try to fight it because that's going to be a strike against their license. So chances are that, the officers are going to have to testify in magistrate. And I doubt very seriously with the evidence that we have and with the integrity of our police officers that they're going to have a very chance of getting that citation overturned.
Right. Yeah, I check I get your magistrate agendas for every meeting, and I always notice that there's always a handful of 119.0s on there, which is vacation rental license violations or lack of license. I see usually a handful of them every single time that you go to magistrate. So I know that you're taking these folks to magistrate, which is a real good thing. So Vice President Tall, I want to see if there's anything more you had to add. We really covered a ton of ground here, so it's great. So go ahead.
I only have two questions really, because we really have done a great job. So one thing that I was thinking, the Help Me Hollywood app and system has really worked out great for being able to report different things in the neighborhood. With the changes at the state legislature, as far as not being able to report something anonymously, I know that some people have registered with Help Me Hollywood with email addresses that aren't very specific as to the name of the person. So as residents, do we have to make a certain change to our profiles within Help Me Hollywood so that you guys and code can respond to it?
I would just say that we do want to be in compliance with the new law, and it would require them to have their name attached to their complaint. So, we obviously we don't want to violate the law. At the same time, you get anonymous complaints and you start to realize there's a problem in an area. That gives you the option of, maybe, going out and doing some more enhanced enforcement or patrolling certain areas that may be identified as being problem areas. But we can't specifically investigate an anonymous complaint because that would be in violation of the new law.
Great. So I guess if you're on Help Me Hollywood, go in there and put your name on there. Otherwise, you're basically talking to the walls. The other question I had was noise ordinance. I know the noise ordinance just changed, and it basically went from a ordinance that requires a victim to a victimless ordinance or violation. And the question is, we've kind of trained everybody as to how to report these noise ordinances. How is the process changed now? If I, have to report a noise complaint, I still call obviously the phone number, but do I need to meet with the officers beforehand? Do I, what is the process because of the new change in the ordinance?
I can just say that you obviously you can't remain anonymous, but as long as you give your name, I have had a practice when I initially came into the city. The first year there was, we started to see neighbor disputes with people being told who the complainant was. So my practice has been for the last 3.5 or 4 years that even though we have your information, if somebody asks for it, there's nothing in that new law that says that we have to freely give it. And my opinion of that is that as was said earlier in this meeting, that you have to ask for a public records request before we're going to give it. I can tell you that since we've put that into place, there has not been not one public records request for who a complainant was. So the way the noise complaint is handled, as long as you give your name, the officer would go there or the code officer would go there. They would, if the noise is within a violation of our code, they would contact the people. They would make a report if they're an officer, forward it to us, and then we would follow up with the case. If it's a code officer, we would do the same thing, but we would issue a citation probably on the spot. We would also, whenever possible, call the management company out and put the 60-minute rule in place. And if they showed up in 90 minutes, that would be another violation. The police are in a different situation though, because they're subject to emergency calls. So it's going to be difficult a lot of times for them to wait around for an hour for somebody to show up.
Okay, so even though we have to give our name, we no longer have to meet with the officer for a noise complaint at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever the case may be, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And if the officer goes there and he finds that there's a violation, he'll write a report and send the report to code, at which time we'll follow it up with a citation or a notice of violation.
Thank you. Terry?
Okay. Commissioner Shuham?
Yeah, just one thing. I just wanted to, we've talked about it, but to me, it's a little confusing. So I just want to state my understanding and make sure that Andrea and John and Sean agree. But so there's two ordinances that talk about noise detection. One is the noise ordinance and the other is the vacation rental ordinance. And in the vacation rental ordinance, the purpose of the noise detector in the rental property is not to alert the police. It's to alert the property management company so that the police and the city and the neighbors are never bothered. So the question, so that's one. And then the other is this noise detection that we've talked about, where the police hopefully will have these devices or they'll rely on their old techniques at the property line. But the one that's in the unit is really preventative. It's to alert the property manager so that they don't get citations, which is a win-win for everybody. But the question I have really, I guess for John, is if we have these DBAs, these noise levels during the day and during the night at the property line, is it just at the discretion of the vacation rental owner to decide when he wants to be alerted on that device that he has to have in the unit?
Yes, we cannot control that, but like Maria said earlier, they have best practices based on their marketing strategies and stuff like that. When you purchase these, I've been told, and I haven't purchased, that they ask you a series of questions and then they give you recommendations on how you should set it up. They'll ask you how many rooms are in the house, how many square footage. They may recommend that you put two of them in the interior. So that they do. Listen, you know, we were able to get buy-in from the realtors. They really thought that this was a big invasion of privacy. But, you know, when they finally got the buy-in and they said, you know, it's a good idea because, you know, it prevents you from getting that first strike, which, you know, let's face it, we did an analysis, we were looking at this, and most of these homes are generating 4 to 5 times their monthly mortgage payment.
Okay.
So these
Right.
people, if they're smart and they put that all towards their equity, in about 5 or 6 years, the house is paid off and they can retire, especially if they have 3 or 4. So, you know, if they're responsible and they're smart and they're really serious about, you know, running a business, they'll take us serious, or we're going to let them know that they should have.
And the device does not record conversations. It measures the level of them. So just
Thanks.
an important side note.
It is, yeah.
Once again, Terry, I just really want to let the community know how hard these city staff members and HPD officers have all come together to work on this. They had groups of different stakeholders that came, and everybody really was creative. And I am so proud that Hollywood has now one of the toughest short-term vacation rental ordinances in the state of Florida. And I really believe that we are going to be a role model. Other states and other cities are going to start with this noise detection idea. I don't think anybody else in Florida has done it yet. And I'm just so grateful and really grateful for everybody on this call for keeping our residents comfortable in their homes and safe in their homes. So thank you all so much. And of course, thanks to the Civic Association for everything that it does. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner, and of course, thank you for staff, Andrea and Shuham and John and Sean especially, and of course our 2 wonderful NTLs and my wonderful Vice President, Tal Mazer.
Well, let me tell you a quick success story with all this, because I know everybody works hard and they never see the results of this. So I have 2 vacation rentals near me. One of them is owned by a friend who moved out of state. And he was constantly dealing with his tenants parking on the lawn, partying in the house, noise complaints. Well, he was in town a couple weeks ago and he saw me and said, listen, I want to tell you, I never realized the impact that I had on you guys by renting out this house. And I've now changed to renting it out for, you know, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months. I'm no longer doing the really short rentals. And my headaches have completely gone away. It's a completely different type of renter. So what we're doing works. And thank you for all the hard work from everybody to make this happen.
Yes, thank you very much all. And again, hopefully with this virus situation maybe getting under control, we will be meeting live again next fall. We don't usually meet during June, July, August. So our next formal general meeting would be September. And for those of you that have not tuned into some of the other YouTube channel meetings that we have hosted here, please do so. Just Google HLCA on YouTube, and you will see a number of meetings here that we have had, and this one will be posted as well. So again, thank you, everybody. Great meeting, wonderful information. And again, I thank everybody for helping. So good night, everybody.